Spectrobes, a dead series that I for one still love playing. A series that I really wish would get more games in the future, but now comes a question I've been thinking about. Is it possible to beat Spectrobes Origins without extracting fossils? Now before we get started, I want to go over some rules, and really, there's only one. We are not allowed to dig out Spectrobe fossils from fossil pods, aka the cubes that they're inside of. We are not counting getting the cubes out of the ground, since the fossil would still be in a cube upon obtaining it. Hence why the term we're using here is extracting, not excavating. So the only Spectrobes we're allowed to use are the ones given to you at the beginning of the game, the fossils that glow during cutscenes, and the Spectrobes you get from constellation codes, as well as the ones you get from linking the game to beyond the portals. The fossil from the tutorial will not count, as we don't have much control over it until the end of the digging. I will be writing the script for this challenge as I go along, since that will make things easier on me. So with all that out of the way, let's get into the challenge. So we start off with the Spectrobes that were given to us, and we go find a fossil that we are forced to excavate and bring back with us. During the digging tutorial, I tried to kill the fossil inside, but the game wouldn't let me, so I was forced to awaken it and tried to release it, but again, the game wouldn't let me. I got a chance to name the Mayorex Bomb Bomb because I couldn't fit Boom Boom, and the Spycan Ray Jang. I also named the Kumainu Magna because I couldn't fit Magna Malo. Comment below if you get the reference. We go to fight some Kroll at a destroyed bridge and take some of them down. This fight mostly involves sending Ray Jang in to get some hits and calling him back before he took any damage. After taking down the brutes, we go to rescue someone from the Kroll and go back to enter an incubator to do a tutorial with the Spectrobe I tried to release earlier. After the tutorial, I tried to release it again and the game still didn't let me. So after that, we go across the bridge, which is now fixed. Once I trained up the team in some battles and giving them some minerals, we go on to fight the mighty Kroll. This fight was pretty easy once our team was level 10, since at that level, we can use ultimate moves. That, and ever since the Nuzlocke I did, I learned that you can just chill between a bunch of trees where the Kroll just cannot reach you. We have defeated this boss with cheese! After beating the first boss, we obtain our first gift fossil, the Zen fossil. We awaken it and name it Punk because the final form of this thing looks pretty steampunky. I then immediately evolve him because he'll be a valuable asset for the next planet. Speaking of the next planet, we head to Doldago and come across more Kroll on the planet. In hindsight, I should have kept the fire monkey small and evolved the Komainu. The reason is because I used the monkey way too many times in my playthroughs of this game. After saving a girl from some plant-like Kroll, we headed off to fight 3 sets of Kroll that were polluting the rivers. After dispatching the first 2 sets of Kroll that were corrupting the water, we head to find the final polluter, only to come across an obstacle that requires us to use a flying child Spectrobe, which we didn't have. And the only way to get one at this point is to extract one. Welp, I guess that means it is not possible to beat Spectrobes Origins without extracting fossils from cubes. We aren't going to end it here though. We'll just grab the flying Spectrobe, use it to get past this mandatory obstacle, and then delete it afterwards. After reviving the required fossil, I was finally able to delete the Torga Spectrobe from the tutorial earlier. After having the Hannah peck the rocks to make them fall, we finally have access to the next area. Once we get there, we fight the final Kroll causing the pollution. This was an annoying fight due to most of the enemies getting in the way. It didn't help that the flying ones kept moving and were hard to hit, and the ones on the ground were tanking the damage. But with Punk sweeping the enemies, we finally take down the polluter and clear the water. Once we headed back to the big tree, we go inside to grab our second glowing fossil, the Zappy fossil. We awaken it and name it Zinogre. If you guys caught the trend with the names, let me know if you get the references. I decide to keep it a child Spectre for now and go unlock the Sky Legendary weapons early, so I can get them, as evolving Zinogre before doing this would lock us out of obtaining the equipment we're most likely gonna need for the next planet. I decided to take on the second Kroll boss, and I did so with a somewhat under-leveled team. As a result, this double drill boss wiped me out in the first attempt. I was a little more careful in the second attempt and eventually took the thing down. After beating the boss, I realized that taking on that boss under-leveled was a mistake. I needed my team to be at least level 20 before taking on the next planet. That, and I needed to evolve Zinogre since he'll be good against the water-type Kroll on Kogo area. Also, I deleted the flying Spectrobe as the next area will have something we need. After training up the team and evolving Zinogre, we go to the next planet, Kogo area. Once we arrive, we go to a cave to fight more Kroll and then fight a bigger one. Mid-battle, we are given a Cosmo Axe to deal with the armored mini-boss. Zinogre came in handy as he was able to paralyze it, giving us a chance to finish it off quickly. We try to head off to the ruins without help and fall into a pit and get our next glowing fossil, the Yukabi fossil. I revive it and call it Bloop and decide to keep it a child Spectrobe because it'll be the only one we get for a while that can fly and help get past certain obstacles. Then we come across a rather unfortunate obstacle that our new flyer can't get past, filling the slots in our Cosmolink with a full team of 6 Spectrobes. This means we cannot progress without extracting Spectrobes to then put on our team because at this point in the game, we can't get any other Spectrobes otherwise. I guess this is the second thing that makes this challenge not possible. But for the sake of the video, I'll grab Spectrobes to fill out the slots temporarily and then delete them. So after showing Camtoga that we are worthy, he gives us the Cosmo Key, which now allows us to get legendary weapons. But before doing that, I immediately delete the Spectrobes we just used to get to this point. So remember those spots we opened up with Zinogre when he was just a child Spectrobe? We can now get the weapons we need from them. The most notable ones being the Yagi Sword and the Zappy Lance, although I'll use the sword more since I'm bad with lances in this game. Once we got the weapons, we fight some Crawl on our way to the Ice Ruins, and put Bloop to good use since he can fly and whack the rocks to make a way for us. After that, we fight a mini-boss that requires the use of the Cosmo Axe. This fight wasn't hard aside from Reijang not being able to do much to it despite having an advantage in typing. But once we axed the thing to death, we proceeded to do puzzle upon puzzle in the Icy Ruins. But before that, we decide to train the team in the room we beat the mini-boss in. Ideally, the team should be level 27 before the major boss. Once we obtain yet another legendary weapon and complete all the puzzles, we take on the 3-headed giant Crawl. This fight was hard since most of my Spectrobes couldn't reach the chest elevated off the ground. But once I switched into Boom Boom, he was able to reach it no problem and get multiple hits, which ended the fight quicker than I expected. After beating the boss, we obtain our next glowing fossil before going to the next planet, the Pepe fossil. Once we awaken it, I name it Egghead and decide to keep it a child Spectrobe for now, since we already have a plant-type Spectrobe on the battle team. But because Egghead is level 34, that means we gotta do some grinding for the team. After training them up with Kiptos, I decide to evolve them as soon as they hit level 30. I normally would wait until they hit level 35 before evolving them, so they can get access to their special moves, but I'm doing so now so they're easier to level up in battle. But we may not need to grind them up that much for the next planet. Once we got to Manahat, we explore a huge desert to find some ruins. I'm not going to explain much about the ruins since they mostly consist of puzzles to solve which aren't exactly exciting. I was exploring more of the desert when I obtained one of the strongest weapons in the game, the Donggiga Axe. This will surely come in handy since it can knock back enemies and deal a lot of damage. I also obtained the Koma Axe thanks to Magna my Komainu. There was also a point in the ruins where I used the Flora Blaster and kept flinching enemies. That was fun. I also was able to get the Zua Glove thanks to Bloop. Then I find yet another legendary weapon thanks to Egghead. Then we go to fight a serpent-like Crawl. This fight was a little rough since Punk my Fire Ape couldn't do much to it. The breath attacks also dealt a lot of damage to us. Reijang came in clutch with his special move which helped, and after slaying the serpent, we go off to complete more puzzles. Once all the puzzles are completed, we go to an ancient lock, awaken a legendary Spectrobe, watch a cool cutscene, and do battle with a boss Crawl. This fight was challenging mostly because the boss kept moving, and it was hard to lock on the weak spot at times. That and the best members I had for this fight were getting low on health. But thankfully, Reijang was able to finish it off. After defeating the giant Crawl, we go on to the last ruins to obtain our next shining fossil, the Shimainu fossil. We are also finally able to ride the Pegatinum. This will really help with traversal. We have also unlocked the most game-changing thing in this entire run, the card input machine. Not only that, but connection to Spectrobes beyond the portals for special gifts. I don't have the actual cards to do the input, so I just looked them up. I first connect to my DS with a copy of Beyond the Portals to get the 2 special Spectrobes, Geki and Tatsu, 2 Spectrobes that are variants of Rygazelle and Leo Puba. After that, I put in all the codes, lined up all the constellations, and received the Flame Racks, Mizusar, Bombzar, Skarazook, Optoger, Golden Hikulasa, the coolest Shacklblad, the red Spikanor, the blue-leafed Florami, the white and blue Shimadoros, the Christmas-themed Gorborus, the black Zapazor, the black, blue, and yellow Yagizora, the black cyan and silver Tegadorax, the Sushi Zuakrid, the cyan Daidongu, a pair of cowboy boots, and finally my favorite, the black and silver Totagarda. I have also obtained a lot of weapons and minerals from the circuit board inputs as well. After gearing up with my new arsenal, it was time to decide on a more permanent team. I had to really think about how I wanted this. It was tough to choose from all these really cool Spectrobes, but I decided on a team. Sapphire the Rygazelle, Reijang the Spikanor, Boom Boom the Mayazera, yes I changed his nickname, Ruby the Leopuba, Cooler the Shacklblad, and finally, Boltra the Totagarda. Any later glowing fossils we obtain will just stay child Spectrobes upon obtaining them. The new team will need some training for the next planet. Oh yeah, speaking of, I almost forgot. I awakened the Shimainu fossil and named it Stout. Comment below if you get the reference. Now that we have our full team, we won't need to evolve it. But since it's level 48, our team has some catching up to do. Well, cue the training montage. In between that training process, I was able to get more legendary weapons thanks to my child Spectrobes as well as the Pegatinum. However, I was getting tired of the grind despite there being a montage, so I grinded the team to level 40 so we can just go. It certainly doesn't help that the enemies in the sunny grasslands didn't scale after I was done with Manahat, but it was now time to go to Sleiso, a planet with a huge tower. Once there, we fight a rather strange crawl. I was trying to stunlock it, but all I had to do was use finishers that my Spectrobes had already prepared while training. After beating it, we move up the tower. This mostly consists of fighting enemies on your way up, as well as completing certain puzzles with your child Spectrobe. In addition to that, you also have to find the right doors in order to progress. There's not much to mention, so I'll only talk about things noteworthy here. We fought a mini-boss that wasn't hard since all I had to do was hammer away at it, literally. After that, we fought the next mini-boss, which was just as easy. I hammered away again, and Ruby used his finisher to take it out, which was awesome. After dispatching an enemy gauntlet, we fight the boss in the highest floor in the tallest tower. This fight was a little nerve-wracking, not because I'm arachnophobic, but because this fight is difficult. The giant slashing was pretty hard to deal with, and we took a lot of damage. But all was not lost as Ruby and Boltra came in clutch with their finishers, and Boltra was able to finish it off with how much damage he was dealing. Can I just say that Totagarda is a Spectrobe that has always been the MVP in any fight? Like, this thing is tanky and hits hard. Anyway, once we beat that boss, we receive what I believe to be the final glowing fossil for the rest of the game. The Tamazoa fossil. I awaken it and name it Squid, and notice that this thing is level 60, which is quite the level gap considering the team is still in their low 40s. Welp, time to grind again. This time, however, I don't exactly need to be level 60. I decide to shoot for level 50 instead. Although this may not be a good idea in the long run since the next planet's boss will be on another level of difficulty, but more on that later. After a long session of grinding, we head to the next planet, Bamud. After wiping out some crawl, we move down to solve more puzzles. This section of the game consists of going down each floor and finding switches to open doors, all while dispatching hordes of crawl. After a bit of puzzle solving, we fight what is possibly the hardest boss in the entire game. I don't exactly have a name for it, but I'll just call it the Fire Boss. The reason this boss is so hard is because he always manages to hit you, especially when in the Fire Aura mode. No matter what level you are, this fight is always rough. In fact, in my Nuzlocke challenge I did for this game, I lost an entire team. However, despite the odds and the fact that my team is 10 levels lower than they should be, I was able to beat this on my first attempt. A few of my team members went down during the fight, but I was able to get the pattern down. So after that, we returned to Iterra to train more before the next major boss fight, as level 60 will be a decent level for it. After grinding to level 60 for the team, we went onto the gate that leads to the Pool of Awakening. With our diverse team with each element, the gate opens, allowing us to pass. Once we reach the top, we fight Jado. This fight was just too easy. All I had to do was attack him when he turned invisible, as well as use finishers when he punched the water. This fight was hardly a challenge even with my team at level 60. After that, I was trying to decide if I needed to grind the team up more. I couldn't remember what the levels of the crawl were on the Crawlosphere, and I was getting a little tired of doing the same sunny grassland grind over and over even though it's the fastest way. So what I did instead is use some of the stat minerals to buff my Spectrobes, as well as give them a good amount of XP minerals. It was finally time to head to the Crawlosphere. Keeping my team healthy was going to be a challenge considering the Gauntlet of Crawl ahead. Once we fight the Gauntlet of Crawl, it was easier than I expected at my team's level. I was playing it carefully though, just to be safe. The only real tricky part was fighting the two mini-bosses as they kept moving when I tried to hammer away at them. So I had to use a finisher from Boom Boom to take out one of them and finish the other off with my hammer. Now, it was time for the final battle. My team versus Crux and his mutant Crawl. The mutant Crawl was dealing a lot of damage but was easy to take down. But once we dispatch it, Crux becomes stronger and more difficult. With the amount of teleporting he did, it was hard to get hits off, and as a result, Ruby missed his finisher. There came a point when Crux was on a sliver of health. All I needed was one hit to end it, but he kept teleporting. That is until I got the final hit and finally defeated Crux. And thus, we have beaten Spectrobes Origins without extracting fossils. Well, at least for the most part. The only times I did were when I needed to get past certain obstacles, but that was it. But nevertheless, I enjoyed this challenge. I was itching to play more Spectrobes, and that's when I came up with this idea. I won't be posting that frequently on this channel since I do Monster Hunter content on my main channel, Reverjolt, for those who don't know. But anyways, thank you very much for watching. Let me know in the comments how much you enjoyed this challenge, and if you did, let me know if you want to see more. Consider liking the video, and consider subscribing to keep up with my next upload. Be derpy, and have a nice day.